My name is Sammy, 32, living paycheck to paycheck while taking care of my sick mom. I applied for a credit card just to cover her urgent medical bills. Then I saw this video on Instagram, my niece and nephew arriving at their birthday party in a helicopter. When I confronted my brother Derek, he smirked and said, "Thanks to your card." I laughed. My card only has $210 available. Did you check the name? That's when Mom pulled out a bank envelope with multiple cards all in my name. Before I dive into this nightmare, drop a like, subscribe, and let me know where you're watching from. Trust me, you'll want to hear how I fought back. I grew up in a modest brick house in Oak Ridge, Ohio, a small Midwest town where everyone knows your business before you do. Our upbringing was humble but never lacking in love, especially from Mom. Martha Anderson raised us on a teacher's salary after Dad took off when I was 7 and Derek was 10. She stretched every dollar like magic, making sure we never felt the absence of luxuries we couldn't afford. My relationship with Mom has always been close. I was the kid who'd help her grade papers at the kitchen table, who'd surprise her with dandelion bouquets and handmade birthday cards. Derek, on the other hand, was always restless, always looking beyond our small-town horizons, fixated on the wealth he saw in movies and magazines. "Why do we shop at thrift stores when Tommy's family buys everything new?" he'd complain. Because value isn't in price tags, Mom would answer patiently, though I could see the hurt in her eyes. That divide only grew wider as we got older. Derek developed this insatiable hunger for status that I never understood, considering we came from the same modest household. He'd save up for designer shirts while wearing them with frayed jeans, creating an illusion of wealth even as a teenager. Before Mom's medical crisis, my life was simple but fulfilling. I worked as an IT support specialist at Midwest Systems, made enough to rent a one-bedroom apartment, and saved a little each month. Nothing fancy, but I was content. I had game nights with friends, weekend hikes at Clearwater Park, and Sunday dinners with Mom. I didn't need much more. Everything changed when Mom was diagnosed with congestive heart failure 2 years ago. Her insurance covered some treatments, but the prescription costs and specialist visits added up quickly. Without hesitation, I stepped up as her primary caretaker, driving her to appointments, managing her medications, and helping with household chores. Derek's response? "I'm swamped with clients. You know how real estate is, I can't just drop everything." That became his mantra whenever responsibility came calling. This wasn't new behavior. I remember when we were kids, Mom assigned us to clean out the garage one weekend. I spent hours organizing while Derek disappeared with friends. When Mom came to inspect, Derek swooped in last minute, moved a few boxes, and somehow took credit for the entire transformation. Mom praised us both equally, not seeing how I fumed silently. The contrast in our adult lives couldn't be more stark. My apartment is a modest 700 square feet with furniture I've had since college. Derek's house, or estate as he calls it, sprawls across 3 acres in Lakewood Heights, the wealthiest neighborhood in the county. 6 bedrooms, a pool that's bigger than my entire apartment, and marble countertops that cost more than my annual salary. Despite my issues with Derek, I adore my niece and nephew. Lucas and Lily are sweet kids beneath their privileged upbringing. When they visit my place, they're fascinated by simple pleasures, like feeding ducks at the park or baking cookies from scratch. I worry about the values they're absorbing from their parents, especially seeing Natalie's obsession with documenting their perfect life on social media. Financially, I was doing okay before Mom got sick. My IT job pays $62,000 annually, decent for our area. But between helping Mom with medical bills, groceries, and household repairs, my savings dwindled to almost nothing. Still, I managed. I cut my own expenses, picked up occasional weekend tech gigs, and lived frugally. I never resented helping Mom. She'd sacrificed everything for us, working summer school and evening tutoring sessions to provide opportunities. Supporting her wasn't a burden, it was the least I could do. What I didn't expect was bearing that responsibility entirely alone, while Derek flaunted wealth he claimed to have earned through hustle and smart investments. "You should diversify your income streams," he'd lecture me at family gatherings, as if my devotion to Mom was some financial planning failure. "I've got 6 properties generating passive income while I sleep." I'd nod politely, swallowing the urge to point out that his first property came from a loan against Mom's house, a loan she's still paying off despite his promises to handle it once he made it big. That was our dynamic, Derek taking, me giving, and Mom believing the best of both her sons. It was an uncomfortable balance, but one I'd grown accustomed to navigating. Then came the medical emergency that would expose the true depths of my brother's selfishness and forever change our family. The day Mom collapsed still haunts me. It was a Tuesday morning in March. I'd called during my lunch break like I always did, but she didn't answer. Something felt wrong, so I drove to her house and found her unconscious on the kitchen floor, her breathing shallow, her skin cold and clammy. The ambulance ride was a blur of sirens and terror. I held her frail hand while paramedics attached monitors and inserted IVs. Heart failure, exacerbation, one said to another over Mom's body. BP's dropping. Those clinical terms couldn't capture the primal fear of watching your parent hover between life and death. At County General Hospital, they rushed her to the cardiac intensive care unit. The waiting room was a purgatory of uncomfortable chairs and bad coffee. I called Derek 5 times straight to voicemail each time. I texted, "Mom's in hospital. Critical. Come now." 3 hours later, he replied with, "In the middle of a huge sale. Keep me posted." Dr. Elizabeth Wilson finally emerged, her expression grave. "Your mother's condition has deteriorated. The medication regimen isn't working as well as we'd hoped. She needs a procedure called cardiac resynchronization therapy with a specialized pacemaker." I nodded, trying to absorb the medical terminology. Will she be okay? With proper treatment, her quality of life could improve significantly. But I want to be transparent, this is serious, and we need to act quickly. Then came the conversation I wasn't prepared for. The financial counselor, a kind-faced woman named Patricia, sat me down with a clipboard full of numbers that made my stomach drop. "Your mother's insurance will cover 60% of the procedure," she explained. "But there's still the matter of the deductible, specialized equipment costs, and post-operative care." The bottom line. We needed $28,000 that insurance wouldn't cover. I had exactly $3,417 in savings, everything I'd managed to hold on to while helping Mom with her regular expenses. "Do you have family who could help?" Patricia asked gently. I thought of Derek and his mansion. "I'll figure something out." That night, I called Derek again, this time from Mom's hospital room where machines beeped steadily, monitoring her fragile heart. "Hey, I'm with clients," he answered, club music pulsing in the background. "Mom needs a specialized pacemaker. Insurance won't cover everything. We need to come up with almost $30,000. "That's rough," he said, sounding distracted. "Listen, my commission check doesn't come until next month. Can you front it? I'll pay you back." "Front $30,000? Derek, I don't have that kind of money." "Well, I'm asset-rich but cash-poor right now. All my money's tied up in investments. The classic Derek excuse. Can't you take out a loan or something?" After we hung up, I looked at Mom's sleeping face, tubes connecting her to machines that kept her alive, and made a decision I would later regret. I applied for a credit card. My credit was decent, not excellent, but unblemished by major debt. Capital First Bank approved me for a card with a $5,000 limit within 48 hours. Not enough for the full amount, but enough for the initial deposit the hospital required to schedule the procedure. The day I signed the paperwork, authorizing treatment I couldn't fully afford, was both terrifying and relieving. Mom squeezed my hand weakly. "You shouldn't have to handle this alone," she whispered. "Don't worry about it. Let's focus on getting you better." I didn't tell her that Derek had effectively abandoned us in this crisis. She always defended him, finding excuses for his selfishness, and I couldn't bear to add to her stress by revealing the truth. The first round of treatments began immediately. I arranged to work remotely, 3 days a week, setting up my laptop beside Mom's hospital bed. During her procedures, I'd camp in the waiting room, answering IT help desk tickets while nervously watching the clock. My boss, Gregory Thompson, was surprisingly understanding. "Family comes first, Sammy. We'll make it work." Mom's treatment routine became my new normal. Morning medications at 6, physical therapy at 10, cardiac specialist at 2, more medications at 6 and 10 in the evening. I tracked everything in a worn notebook, became fluent in medical terminology I'd never wanted to learn, and grew familiar with every nurse on the cardiac floor. To manage the new debt, I started working overtime whenever Mom was stable enough to be alone. I'd come home from the hospital at 9, open my laptop, and handle emergency IT tickets until midnight. Weekends became dedicated to higher-paying freelance tech jobs. Sleep was a luxury I couldn't afford. 2 weeks after the initial procedure, complications arose. Mom developed an infection at the insertion site. Dr. Wilson prescribed specialized antibiotics, not fully covered by insurance, of course. Another $800 on the credit card. The infection is responding to treatment, Dr. Wilson assured me, but we'll need to keep her an extra week for observation. Each additional day in the hospital meant more charges. The $5,000 credit limit was rapidly approaching. I applied for a limit increase, holding my breath until they approved it, raising my available credit to $7,500. Despite the financial stress, there were moments of grace. The evening, Mom sat up unassisted for the first time. The morning, she ate a full breakfast without fatigue. The afternoon, she laughed at a sitcom rerun, her color finally returning to normal. "You're my guardian angel," she told me one night, her eyes clear for the first time in weeks. "I don't know what I'd do without you." Those words made the crushing debt almost bearable. Almost. I noticed the strange charges about 3 weeks after Mom was discharged from the hospital. Reviewing my online statement at midnight after a long day of work and caregiving, I spotted transactions I didn't recognize. Hamilton's fine jewelry, $749.99. Luxury auto detail, $329.50. The Lakeside Grill, $412.75. My heart raced. Credit card fraud was the last thing I needed. I immediately called the 24-hour customer service line. "I'm seeing charges I didn't make," I explained to the representative named Michael. "I need to report fraud on my account." "I understand, sir. Let me look at those transactions." After a pause, "These were all made with the physical card present, not online purchases. The card was swiped at these locations." "That's impossible. My card is right here." I pulled my wallet out to confirm, and sure enough, there was my Capital First credit card. "Well, according to our records, the card was present. Do you have any authorized users on your account?" "No, just me." Michael helped me file a dispute and promised to investigate. They would temporarily remove the charges while looking into the matter. I tried to sleep that night, but kept wondering how someone could use my card in person when it never left my possession. 3 days later, more unfamiliar charges appeared. Premier Men's Clothing, $1,235. Skyline Helicopter Tours, $2,500. Deposit. Sweet Celebrations Bakery, $850. I called the credit card company again, increasingly frantic. This time, the representative said something that made my blood run cold. "Mr. Anderson, these charges were made with a card ending in 8472. Your primary card ends in 6913. "I only have one card," I insisted. "According to our system, you have 3 cards on this account, the primary and 2 authorized user cards, both added 2 weeks ago." My mind raced to make sense of this information. I hadn't added any authorized users. I hadn't received any additional cards. Then a sickening realization began to form: these weren't random fraudulent charges. They were being made at businesses my brother frequented. The following Sunday, I brought dinner to Mom's house as usual. To my surprise, Derek's Range Rover was in the driveway. He rarely visited Mom unless he needed something. Inside, Derek and Natalie sat at the dining table with Mom, who looked more animated than I'd seen her in months. "There's my other son," Mom beamed. "Look who came to visit." Derek wore a new watch that glinted under the dining room light. It looked exactly like the ones in the Hamilton jewelry display windows I'd passed downtown. "Hey, little brother," he said with that practiced smile he used on clients. "Mom was just telling us how you swooped in and saved the day with her medical bills. Real superhero stuff." "Just doing what needs to be done," I said, studying him. Was I being paranoid, or was that a new designer shirt he was wearing too? Throughout dinner, Derek and Natalie flaunted their lifestyle, talking about their recent yacht club membership and the twins' private school acceptance. "The tuition is outrageous," Natalie sighed dramatically, "but they offer equestrian lessons and Mandarin Chinese starting in 3rd grade, worth every penny." I noticed Mom beaming proudly at Derek's success, while I silently calculated how I'd make next month's minimum payment on the credit card. After dinner, I checked Natalie's Instagram while sitting in my car. Her latest post showed Derek in a freshly detailed Mercedes, the same one he'd brought to Mom's house, with the caption, "Nothing but the best for my king. Blessed luxury life." The date of the post aligned perfectly with the luxury auto detail charge on my card. My anxiety mounted as the credit card balance climbed over the next 2 weeks. I tried bringing it up casually with Mom. "Hey, have you seen any mail come for me here? Maybe some credit card stuff?" I asked while helping her sort medications into her weekly pill organizer. She looked away quickly. "No, nothing like that. Why would your mail come here?" Her voice had that tight quality it got when she was hiding something. The same tone she'd used when telling 10-year-old me that Dad was just on a long business trip months after he'd actually abandoned us. I decided to confront Derek directly. I called and asked to meet for coffee, trying to keep my tone light. "What's this about? I'm slammed with showings all week," he said. "Just brother stuff. Won't take long." We met at a coffee shop downtown, not the fancy one he preferred, but a place I could actually afford. Derek arrived 20 minutes late, checking his watch repeatedly to signal his importance. "So, what's so urgent?" he asked, after ordering a $7 specialty latte. "I've been having some issues with my credit card. Charges I didn't make at places like Hamilton's Jewelry and Luxury Auto Detail." I watched his face carefully. Not a flicker of guilt. Instead, he launched into a condescending lecture. "You should really monitor your accounts better, Sammy. Identity theft is rampant. Did you know 70% of Americans experience some form of credit fraud? You probably use weak passwords or shop on sketchy websites." "That's the thing," I pressed. "These aren't online charges. Someone physically used a card." He shrugged, checking his phone. "Sounds like a pain. Anyway, I've got to run." Showing a waterfront property to a celebrity client. He stood, adjusting his expensive watch, the one I was increasingly convinced I had unwittingly paid for. The breaking point came 3 days later. Scrolling through social media during my lunch break, I saw Natalie had posted a video that made my stomach drop. My niece and nephew, Lucas and Lily, were stepping out of an actual helicopter on the grounds of Derek's mansion, surrounded by cheering children in party attire. The caption read, "Only the best for our birthday twins. A grand entrance for our 10-year-old royalty. Helicopter party twinning birthday extravaganza." I watched, horrified, as the video showed an elaborate setup with professional entertainers, a mobile video game trailer, a live petting zoo, and what appeared to be a minor celebrity singer performing. This wasn't just an expensive party, it was obscenely extravagant. Comments beneath the video were filled with praise. "Oh my God, parent goals. Those kids are living the dream. How did they get Jaden Cruz to perform? He charges a fortune." The final comment from Natalie sealed it. "Nothing but the best for our babies. Planning this for months. Worth every penny of the $15,000. $15,000. More than twice my monthly salary. The amount I was desperately trying to figure out how to pay for Mom's ongoing care." I checked my credit card account immediately. The available credit showed only $210 remaining out of a $7,500 limit. New charges had appeared. Skyline Helicopter Tours, $3,500, final payment. Celebrity Connections booking, $5,000. Platinum Party Planners, $2,750. Wildwood Petting Zoo, $1,200. Gamer Paradise Mobile, $895. As I stared at the screen, another charge appeared in real time. Premium Catering Services, $1,895. That was impossible. The total exceeded my credit limit by thousands. Unless, my hands shaking, I called Capital First Bank again. "Can you tell me my current credit limit?" I asked. "Certainly, Mr. Anderson. Your current limit is $25,000. It was increased 2 weeks ago upon request." I had never requested an increase beyond the $7,500. Someone else had done it in my name. I felt sick as the pieces finally clicked into place. This wasn't random fraud. This was deliberate. This was family. This was betrayal. I didn't call ahead, didn't text, didn't give any warning. I drove straight to Derek's mansion in the wealthy Lakewood Heights neighborhood, my knuckles white on the steering wheel, a storm of emotions threatening to drown me. My beat-up Honda Civic looked absurdly out of place, parked next to their luxury vehicles in the circular driveway. The doorbell played a custom chime, some classical piece that probably cost hundreds to program. Natalie opened the door, her perfect smile faltering when she saw me standing there unannounced. "Sammy? We weren't expecting you." She was wearing yoga clothes that probably cost more than my entire wardrobe, her hair freshly styled despite being just around the house. "I need to talk to Derek." My voice was tight, controlled. "He's in meetings all afternoon. Perhaps you could—" "It's about the credit card charges." I stepped forward, not asking permission to enter. "The ones for your helicopter party." Her eyes widened slightly, a flash of recognition before she composed herself. "I'm not sure what you're talking about. Let me see if Derek can step away." She disappeared down a hallway, leaving me in their cavernous foyer, with its marble floors and crystal chandelier. Family photos lined the walls, perfect poses of Derek, Natalie, and the twins in color-coordinated outfits on beaches, mountains, and European landmarks. Not a single picture included Mom. 5 minutes later, Derek emerged from his home office, dressed in a button-down shirt and designer jeans, looking annoyed at the interruption. "This better be important, Sammy. I'm on a conference call with international investors." I pulled up the credit card statement on my phone and thrust it toward him. "Want to explain why there are charges for helicopter rides and celebrity appearances on my credit card? For your kid's birthday party?" His expression shifted from annoyance to something more calculated. He closed his office door behind him. "Lower your voice. The kids are upstairs with their tutor." "I don't care. You stole my identity. You committed fraud. I didn't steal anything," he interrupted, his voice maddeningly calm. "Mom handled all the financial arrangements." "What are you talking about?" "Mom wanted to help with the twins' birthday," she offered. "Mom is living on a fixed income and recovering from heart failure." He sighed dramatically. "Look, family helps family, right? That's what you're always preaching. Mom wanted the kids to have a special birthday. I just helped facilitate. With my credit card?" My voice cracked with disbelief. Derek's expression shifted to that smug grin I'd grown to hate. "Thanks to your card, yes. The kids had the best day of their lives. You should have seen their faces when the helicopter landed." "I did see it. On your wife's social media, where she bragged about spending $15,000 on a children's party. It was closer to $20,000, actually. The video doesn't show everything." I felt like I'd been punched. My card only has a $7,500 limit, with just $210 left available. "Did you even check the name on the account you were draining?" Derek looked over my shoulder, and his smile widened. "Perfect timing. Mom can explain everything." I turned to see Mom standing in the doorway, looking small and frail compared to the grandiosity of Derek's house. She clutched a large envelope from Capital First Bank. "Sammy, honey," she began, her voice trembling. "I was going to tell you. Derek said it would help build your credit score if we spread out the expenses." "What expenses? What are you talking about?" With shaking hands, she opened the envelope and pulled out not one, not two, but 5 credit cards, all with my name embossed on them. "The bank sent these to my address," she explained. "Derek said you knew. He said you wanted to help with my medical bills and his business expenses, and this was the smartest way financially." The room seemed to tilt. "I never applied for those cards. I only got one card to help with your medical expenses." "But Derek said." Mom's voice trailed off as she looked between us, the terrible truth dawning on her face. Derek's phone rang, and he answered it casually, as if we weren't in the middle of a life-altering confrontation. "Hey, Vincent, let me call you back in 5. Just wrapping something up." He hung up and turned to me with a dismissive wave. "It's not a big deal, Sammy. The cards are in your name, but we're family. Mom signed as an authorized user, and she added me to help manage things. It's all perfectly legal." "Legal? You forged my signature. You committed identity theft. Mom signed the applications, not me," he interrupted smoothly. "And she had your permission to handle your finances during her medical crisis. Remember? You gave her power of attorney for healthcare decisions. This falls under that umbrella." I looked at Mom, whose eyes were filling with tears. "Did you sign credit card applications in my name?" She nodded slowly. "Derek said it was what you wanted. He said you told him to help me get it set up since you were so busy working and taking care of me," he said. Her voice broke. "He said you were family, so what did it matter whose name was on the account?" I felt physically ill. My own mother had been manipulated into committing fraud against me, by my brother. For a helicopter party. "How much?" I managed to ask. "How much total did you put on cards in my name?" Mom looked at Derek, who shrugged indifferently. "Just over 50,000, across all the cards," she whispered. "For my medical bills, and then Derek said we could help with some of his business expenses too, since you wouldn't mind. $50,000. More than my annual take-home pay, an amount that would take years to repay. He told me the business expenses were temporary," Mom continued, her voice small, "that he'd pay it all back once his commission checks came in next month." Derek checked his watch impatiently. "Look, I've got another call in 2 minutes. We can discuss repayment terms later if you're going to be so uptight about this. Maybe you could learn something about investing instead of worrying about credit card debt. That's small-time thinking." In that moment, something broke inside me, the final thread of respect I'd maintained for my older brother, the last shred of hope that somewhere beneath his obsession with status and wealth, there was still the boy who'd once stood up for me on the playground. "This isn't about investment philosophy, Derek. This is fraud. This is betrayal. This is the kind of thing people go to prison for." He laughed, actually laughed. "Don't be so dramatic. No one's going to prison. Mom consented, and you'll never press charges against your own mother." The worst part was, he was right. I looked at Mom, who seemed to have aged 10 years in the last 10 minutes, her face crumpled with the realization of what she'd been manipulated into doing. "I trusted him," she whispered. "He's my son. I trusted him." Derek's phone rang again. "I need to take this. We're done here." He turned and walked back toward his office, dismissing the bomb he'd dropped on my life as if it were a minor inconvenience. I helped Mom to a chair, her legs seemingly unable to support her any longer. "I'm so sorry," she kept repeating. "I thought I was helping. He said it was what you wanted." The drive home was a blur. Mom sat silently in my passenger seat, the envelope of fraudulent credit cards on her lap like a confession. I dropped her off at her house, made sure she took her evening medications, and promised to return in the morning. "We'll figure this out," I told her, not believing my own words. Back in my apartment, I sat in the dark, staring at credit card statements that threatened to destroy my financial future, trying to process the magnitude of the betrayal. Not just from Derek, I'd long ago stopped expecting better from him, but from Mom, whose misguided trust had made her complicit. I didn't sleep that night. How could I, when every time I closed my eyes, I saw those credit card statements? When I pictured children arriving at a birthday party in a helicopter paid for with debt that would haunt me for years. My phone buzzed with a text from Derek. "Don't be such a drama queen. Family helps family. I'll send you a check when my Lakeside Heights deal closes next month." I turned off my phone, no longer able to bear the weight of his empty promises. In the quiet darkness of my apartment, I finally let the tears come, not just for the money, but for the family bonds that had been irrevocably broken by greed and betrayal. The morning after the confrontation, I called in sick to work for the first time in 3 years. Instead of my usual IT help desk duties, I spent the day researching identity theft and credit fraud, hunched over my laptop at my kitchen table, empty coffee cups accumulating as the hours passed. What I learned was sobering. Despite Derek's dismissive attitude, the situation was legally classified as identity theft, even when committed by family members. The fact that Mom had physically signed the applications complicated matters. She could potentially face charges as well. The thought of my 65-year-old mother with a heart condition being criminally prosecuted made me physically ill. My first stop was Capital First Bank. I sat across from a suspicious-faced manager named Harold Johnson, who regarded me with thinly veiled skepticism as I explained the situation. "So you're claiming you didn't open these additional cards or request the credit line increases?" he asked, peering over reading glasses. "That's right. I only applied for the initial card with the $5,000 limit. Yet the applications have your signature. They're forged. Or my mother was manipulated into signing them." Harold's expression hardened. "Mr. Anderson, making false claims of fraud is itself a crime. These applications came from your mother's home address, were activated from her home IP address, and have been in active use for weeks with no previous fraud reports from you. Because I didn't know they existed. I only had the one physical card. The bank sent notifications about the new accounts to the address on file. My brother made sure that address was my mother's house, not mine." The meeting ended with Harold reluctantly providing fraud claim paperwork, but warning me that family disputes over shared finances were not the bank's problem. He made it clear that without a police report, the bank wouldn't consider forgiveness of the debt. which led to the most humiliating experience of my adult life, filing a police report against my own family members. Officer Jenkins took my statement at the local precinct, his expression neutral but his eyes occasionally revealing pity as I detailed how my mother and brother had opened multiple credit accounts in my name. "You understand that by filing this report, you're potentially subjecting your mother and brother to criminal charges?" he asked. I nodded, the weight of that decision crushing me. I just want the debt removed from my name. I can't pay off $50,000 for helicopter rides and jewelry I never bought. Well, the DA will decide whether to pursue charges based on our investigation. In identity theft cases involving family members, they often consider the victim's wishes. I left the police station feeling like a traitor, despite being the one betrayed. When I arrived at Mom's house that evening, she was sitting in the dark, her eyes red-rimmed from crying. She looked up as I entered, her expression a mixture of shame and fear. "I got a call from the bank today," she said quietly, "and from the police." I sat beside her on the worn sofa, the same one I'd helped her pick out 15 years ago when Dad's old recliner finally gave out. "I had to report it, Mom. The bank wouldn't remove the charges otherwise." "I know." Her voice was barely audible. "I told them everything. How Derek brought me the applications. How he told me you had authorized it but were too busy to handle the paperwork. How I trusted him because—" Her voice broke. "Because he's my son, and I never thought he would lie to me like this." I put my arm around her shoulders, feeling how thin she'd become during her illness. "He manipulated you. This isn't your fault. But I signed those papers, Sammy. I should have called you directly. I should have known better." The pain in her voice was unbearable. Derek had not only stolen my identity, but had weaponized our mother's trust against both of us. "The police officer said I might face charges too," she whispered. "I told them I don't want that. I just want the debt cleared." She nodded slowly. "I've been such a fool. All these years, making excuses for him, believing his promises." That night, I made a decision. To save money and be closer to Mom, I gave notice on my apartment and moved back into my childhood bedroom. The twin bed was too small, the posters from high school embarrassingly outdated, but the rent was free, and Mom needed someone close by. The financial reality was grim. Even if the fraud investigation went in my favor, my credit was already severely damaged. My once respectable credit score of 720 had plummeted to 490. I was now considered high risk by lenders, which affected everything from insurance rates to rental applications. To stay afloat, I picked up a second job stocking shelves at a grocery store 3 nights a week. Between my regular IT position during the day and the store job from 10 p.m. to 4 a.m., I was averaging 4 hours of sleep on weeknights. The physical toll was immediate: constant exhaustion, weight loss, frequent headaches. The emotional toll built more slowly but cut deeper. My relationship with Rachel, a kindergarten teacher I'd been dating for 8 months, became a casualty of my crisis. "I barely see you anymore," she said during our final conversation at her apartment. "And when I do, you're either checking credit alerts on your phone or falling asleep mid-sentence. I care about you, Sammy, but this isn't a relationship anymore." I couldn't blame her. I had nothing left to give, not energy, not time, not emotional presence. Derek's response to the fraud investigation was swift and vicious. His attorney sent a threatening letter claiming I was committing familial defamation and that any legal action would result in countersuits that would financially devastate all parties involved. Mom received a separate letter, its language more emotionally manipulative. "As your son attempts to criminalize your efforts to help your family during a medical crisis, consider the impact on your grandchildren, who may be deprived of their father, should these baseless allegations proceed." When these intimidation tactics didn't immediately work, Derek escalated. He showed up at Mom's house one afternoon when I was at work, his Range Rover blocking her driveway. "He said I was choosing you over my grandchildren," Mom told me later, her hands shaking as she recounted the conversation. "He said if I testified against him, I would never see Lucas and Lily again." Meanwhile, Natalie launched her own social media campaign, posting thinly veiled references to ungrateful family members and the pain of helping someone only to be stabbed in the back. Her followers, who knew nothing of the reality, flooded her posts with supportive comments and angry emojis on my behalf. The twins, innocent in all this, became unwitting weapons. During a rare supervised visit at a neutral location, a park halfway between our homes, Lucas looked at me with confusion. Dad says, "You're trying to put him in jail because you're jealous of our house." That's not true, right, Uncle Sammy? Lily, always the more perceptive one, studied my face carefully. Are you mad at us because of our birthday party? Dad said it made you really angry. How do you explain identity theft and financial fraud to 10-year-olds? How do you tell them their father exploited their grandmother's medical crisis for his own gain? You don't. I just hugged them and said, I could never be mad at you. This is grown-up stuff that has nothing to do with you. By the 6th week of the investigation, I hit rock bottom. I missed 2 shifts at the grocery store after falling asleep the moment I got home from my day job. My boss at Midwest Systems called me into his office to discuss customer complaints about my distracted demeanor and unusual response delays. The final straw came when I found Mom flushing her heart medications down the toilet. What are you doing? I grabbed the prescription bottle from her hand. They're too expensive, she said simply. I saw the bills, Sammy. You can't afford both rent and my medicine, and I won't be a burden anymore. I sat on the bathroom floor and cried, really cried for the first time since childhood. Mom joined me, both of us broken by my brother's selfishness, both of us unsure if our family could ever recover. That night, staring at the glow in the dark stars I'd stuck to my bedroom ceiling at age 12, I made a decision. This couldn't continue. Something had to change. Derek had taken enough from us. It was time to fight back. Identity theft by family members is unfortunately common, but that doesn't make it any less criminal, said Stephanie Carson, sliding a business card across her desk. Unlike the bank manager and police officers, she looked me straight in the eye, without judgment or suspicion. I'd found Stephanie through a victims advocacy group online. As an attorney specializing in identity theft cases, she'd seen situations like mine before, though she admitted the helicopter birthday party was a new level of audacity. Here's what we need to do, she explained, her no-nonsense attitude oddly comforting after weeks of chaos. First, we gather evidence, all the credit applications, bank statements, and any communication showing your brother's involvement. Second, we file formal disputes with all 3 credit bureaus. Third, we cooperate with the police investigation while protecting your mother from potential charges. For the first time since discovering the fraud, I felt a flicker of hope. Someone with authority believed me. Someone was willing to help. Over the next 2 weeks, I methodically built my case. I created a spreadsheet tracking every fraudulent charge, linking each to social media posts or other evidence showing Derek and Natalie had received the benefits. The helicopter company confirmed Derek had personally made the reservation. The jewelry store had his signature on the receipt for the watch. The catering company had emails from Natalie specifying menu details. Most damning of all was a recorded phone conversation. Derek had called, thinking he could intimidate me into dropping the investigation. I put him on speaker while using my work computer to record, informing him at the start that the call was being recorded. "This is ridiculous, Sammy," he'd said. "So, I used your credit for a few things. We're family. The money was going to circulate back to you eventually. $50,000 for a children's party and luxury items was going to circulate back to me. The party was an investment in my real estate image. Clients trust successful people. The more successful I appear, the bigger the homes I sell, the more money I make, and eventually, I'd help Mom with medical bills. It's business strategy that you funded with fraud." He laughed dismissively. "It's only fraud if you press charges against your own mother. You won't do that. You're too soft." That recording became key evidence in the case. Meanwhile, Harold Johnson at Capital First Bank had a change of heart after reviewing the mounting evidence. He became an unexpected ally, helping navigate the bank's fraud department and placing temporary holds on further interest accumulation while the investigation proceeded. "I've seen too many families destroyed by financial exploitation," Harold confided during our 3rd meeting. "Your brother's actions were particularly egregious." The most difficult conversation was with Mom. Sitting at her kitchen table, with case files spread between us, I finally asked the question I'd been avoiding. "Would you be willing to provide a formal statement about how Derek manipulated you into signing those applications?" She stared down at her hands, twisted with arthritis and age. "Will he go to jail?" "I don't know. Maybe. That's for the court to decide." She was quiet for a long moment. "He's still my son." "So am I, Mom. And I'm the one who's been here, taking care of you, working 2 jobs to keep us afloat, while he used your illness as an opportunity to steal my identity." Her eyes filled with tears, but there was a new resolve in them. "I'll do it. Not to punish Derek, but because the truth matters. Because what he did was wrong, and I was wrong to enable it." That statement became another crucial piece of evidence. As our case strengthened, we discovered something unexpected. Beneath Derek's facade of wealth and success, his real estate business was struggling. Vincent, his business partner, contacted me after learning of the investigation. "Derek's been operating on smoke and mirrors for years," Vincent explained over coffee. "The mansion is mortgaged to the hilt. The luxury cars are leased. He's been using client deposits to fund his lifestyle, promising returns he can't deliver. I've been trying to untangle the books for months, but it's a mess. This credit card fraud might be just the tip of the iceberg." Armed with this information, Stephanie advised a strategic approach. Rather than pursuing maximum criminal penalties, we would leverage the threat of prosecution to secure financial restitution. "Your brother is house poor but asset rich," she explained. "He owns property that has value, even with the mortgages. We can demand he liquidate or transfer assets to cover the fraudulent debts." 3 days later, Derek's attorney contacted Stephanie with a settlement offer. Derek would pay $25,000, half the fraudulent amount, if we dropped all claims. "Absolutely not," I told Stephanie. "He pays the full amount, plus legal fees and credit restoration costs, and he needs to face some consequences beyond just writing a check." Our counterproposal was strategically crafted. Derek would transfer ownership of a small rental property he owned outright to Mom, the income from which would cover her ongoing medical expenses. He would pay the full $50,000 in fraudulent charges, plus $10,000 for legal fees and credit damage. In exchange, we would request the district attorney pursue probation rather than jail time. Derek's attorney rejected our proposal immediately. Then Vincent provided copies of questionable real estate transactions, which Stephanie forwarded to the district attorney's office. 2 days later, Derek's attorney called back, suddenly amenable to our terms. The final meeting took place in Stephanie's office. Derek arrived without Natalie, his usual swagger replaced by tight-lipped anger. He didn't look at me or Mom as his attorney reviewed the settlement agreement. "By signing this document, your client admits to identity theft and credit fraud," Stephanie explained. "He agrees to transfer the Maple Street property to Martha Anderson, to pay $50,000 to clear the fraudulent credit card debt and an additional $10,000 for legal fees and credit restoration services." "And the criminal charges?" Derek's attorney asked. "We'll recommend probation and community service, but ultimately that's up to the district attorney. Our victim impact statements will emphasize that restitution was made willingly." Derek finally spoke, his voice bitter. "This is still blackmail." I met his eyes for the first time. "No, Derek. This is accountability. Something you've avoided your entire life." He signed the papers with a forceful scrawl, then stood to leave without another word. "Derek," Mom called, her voice steady despite the tears in her eyes. "What you did wasn't just illegal. It was cruel. To both of us. I hope someday you understand that." He paused at the door, his back still turned. For a moment, I thought he might apologize, might show some glimmer of remorse or understanding. Instead, he walked out without looking back. As promised, Derek's rental property was transferred to Mom the following week. The modest duplex generated $1,600 monthly in rental income, enough to cover her ongoing medical expenses with a small cushion for emergencies. The $50,000 payment cleared the fraudulent debt, and the additional funds helped restore my credit over time. The district attorney, influenced by our victim statements and the full restitution, agreed to 3 years probation and 200 hours of community service. Derek also faced a disciplinary hearing with the real estate board, resulting in a 6-month license suspension. The most public consequence came when Natalie's carefully curated social media empire imploded. Without the fraudulent funding, the luxury lifestyle became unsustainable. Their mansion went into foreclosure 4 months later, forcing them to downsize dramatically. Natalie's final Instagram post before switching her account to private showed their moving boxes, with a vague caption about embracing simplicity and weathering storms together. Through Jason's recommendation, I found a better-paying IT position at a healthcare company, with more regular hours, allowing me to quit the grocery store job. Rachel and I cautiously reconnected, taking things slowly as I worked to rebuild my life. Mom moved in with me permanently to a new 2-bedroom apartment closer to my work. We found a cardiac specialist who accepted her insurance, and with proper medication and care, her condition stabilized. The twins were perhaps the most innocent victims in all this. After weeks of no contact, during which Derek and Natalie had apparently told them I was too busy to see them, I reached out directly to their school, arranging to pick them up one afternoon with Derek's reluctant permission. "Are you and Dad still fighting?" Lucas asked as we walked to a nearby ice cream shop. "We had a very serious disagreement," I explained carefully, "but that has nothing to do with how much I love you both." Lily, always perceptive, looked up from her ice cream. "We don't live in the big house anymore. Dad says it's your fault. Sometimes adults blame others when things go wrong," I said gently. "The truth is more complicated. The important thing is that I'm still your uncle, and I always will be, no matter what happens between your dad and me." By Christmas, Derek had reluctantly agreed to regular visits. He and I maintained a cold civility in the children's presence, like diplomatic representatives from hostile nations finding neutral ground. It wasn't forgiveness or reconciliation; those would take much more time, if they ever came at all, but it was a start. 6 months after the settlement, life had found a new rhythm. Mom and I had settled into our apartment, decorating it with cherished photos and familiar furniture that made it feel like home. Her health had stabilized with proper medication and care, and the income from the rental property covered her medical expenses without draining my paycheck. My new job at Memorial Health Systems paid nearly $20,000 more annually than my previous position, with better benefits and a supportive team. I'd been promoted to Senior Network Administrator within 4 months, finally putting my IT skills to their fullest use. The financial damage was healing too. My credit score had climbed back to 680. Not perfect, but respectable enough to qualify for an auto loan when my Honda finally gave out. The new credit monitoring service alerted me to any suspicious activity, though there had been none since Derek's probation began. The emotional healing was slower, more complex. Trust, once shattered, doesn't mend easily. I still check my credit report every morning. I admitted to Jason during one of our weekend hikes. "First thing I do when I wake up. I know it's paranoid, but I can't help it." After what happened, "That's not paranoia, it's prudence," he replied. "Some lessons you only need to learn once." One Tuesday evening, as Mom and I were preparing dinner, the doorbell rang. Derek stood in the hallway, looking uncomfortable and out of place. It was the first time he'd come to our apartment. "Can we talk?" he asked, his usual confidence nowhere to be seen. Mom invited him in with a warmth I couldn't yet feel. We sat in the living room, the air thick with unspoken history. "I've been doing financial counseling as part of my probation," he began awkwardly. "The counselor suggested I make amends, to try to explain. Explain stealing my identity and $50,000? The bitterness in my voice surprised even me. "I can't justify what I did. I know that now." He stared at his hands. "I got caught up in appearances, in what other people thought. The bigger house, the fancier cars, the more elaborate parties it was. Never enough. I was drowning in debt but couldn't admit it, couldn't show any weakness." Mom reached out to touch his arm. "Why didn't you just ask for help, like Sammy did?" "Because Sammy's always been the good son, the responsible one, the one who stayed while I left. Asking him for help would mean admitting I'd failed." He looked up at me. It was easier to take than to ask. Easier to lie than to face the truth. It wasn't quite an apology, but it was more honesty than I'd heard from him in years. "I'm not asking for forgiveness," he continued. "I just wanted you both to know that I understand what I did. The counselor says recognizing the harm is the first step." After he left, Mom and I sat in silence for a long while. "Do you think he means it?" she finally asked. "I don't know. I hope so, for the kids' sake. But trust has to be earned, not just requested." We established cautious boundaries. Derek could visit Mom at our apartment when I was present. We would attend family events for the twins' sake, but maintain our distance otherwise. Any financial discussions were strictly off-limits. 2 months later, Lucas and Lily turned 11. Instead of a helicopter or celebrity performers, they had their party at our apartment, homemade cake, simple games, and genuine laughter. Watching them blow out their candles, surrounded by friends rather than spectacle, I saw happiness that no amount of extravagance could purchase. "This is the best birthday ever, Uncle Sammy," Lily whispered as she helped me serve cake. Dad's been teaching us about budgets. He says experiences matter more than stuff. Perhaps Derek was actually learning something after all. Rachel and I had cautiously reconnected, our relationship stronger for having weathered the crisis. On our 6-month reunion anniversary, she confessed something I hadn't expected. I admire how you handled everything, she said as we walked along the riverfront. You could have just declared bankruptcy and walked away. You could have pushed for Derek to serve jail time. Instead, you found a solution that protected your mom and still held him accountable. That takes real strength. I hadn't thought of it that way. I'd been so focused on survival that I hadn't recognized the growth that came with it. The most profound healing came in quiet moments with Mom. One evening, as we sat on our small balcony watching the sunset, she took my hand. I enabled Derek his whole life, she said softly, making excuses, covering for him, believing his promises. I thought that's what mothers do, love, unconditionally. I didn't realize that true love sometimes means setting boundaries. You were manipulated, I reminded her. We both were. Yes, but I had decades of practice making his problems disappear. When he brought those credit applications, some part of me knew it wasn't right. But I'd spent so long protecting him from consequences that I couldn't stop. She squeezed my hand. I'm learning, though. Better late than never. Her journey to make amends had been as difficult as my own healing. She'd written me a letter, detailing how she'd been manipulated but also acknowledging her own responsibility. She'd testified truthfully during the investigation, despite Derek's attempts to guilt her. She'd even started attending a support group for parents of adult children with financial problems. Through it all, I discovered that forgiveness isn't a single act but a process sometimes smooth, sometimes halting, but always moving forward. I hadn't fully forgiven Derek, might never completely trust him again, but I'd found a way to prevent his actions from defining my future. The most unexpected lesson came from the twins. During a weekend visit, Lucas proudly showed me the savings account he'd opened with his allowance. I'm saving for college, he announced. Dad says we need to understand the value of money. Lily nodded seriously. And we're helping with chores to earn extra. Money doesn't just appear like magic. Watching these children learn lessons their father had missed growing up, I felt a glimmer of hope for our family's future. The cycle could be broken. New patterns could emerge. The credit card fraud had nearly destroyed me financially, had strained my closest relationships, and had exposed painful truths about my family. But it had also revealed strengths I didn't know I possessed: resilience, determination, and the courage to stand up for myself even against those I loved. True wealth, I discovered, wasn't measured in helicopter rides or designer watches. It was found in a mother's genuine remorse and effort to change. In children learning values their parents had missed. In the slow, imperfect process of rebuilding trust with boundaries and accountability, I still check my credit report every morning. Some habits are hard to break. But now, after confirming all is well, I take a moment to appreciate what I have. Not luxury or status, but something far more valuable: a life built on truth, with relationships that can bend without breaking, and the knowledge that no matter what challenges come next, I have the strength to face them. If you've ever experienced betrayal from someone you trusted, especially family, you know the unique pain that comes with it. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with loved ones to protect yourself? Drop a comment below. Your story might help someone else navigating a similar situation. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to hear more real-life stories of overcoming betrayal and finding strength through life's hardest moments. And remember, true wealth isn't in your bank account. It's in living authentically and surrounding yourself with people who respect your boundaries. Thanks for listening, and I hope sharing my experience helps you in your own journey.